our cloud technologies, and specifically intelligent data to build their business model and make it more effective. So the other thing I want to talk about is, so we've talked a little bit, so we've got community, we've got startups adopting technology quickly, we've got enterprises adopting technology to add value propositions to their business. What about security? What about privacy? These are huge, important things in EMEA and now worldwide. So interestingly, within Google Cloud, we've implemented a number of systems that allowed you to protect data, enable privacy, and so things like the cloud data loss prevention. And if we go a step farther into healthcare DID, the notion of being able to have private data. So the other thing I want to talk about is, so we've talked, when you're working with things like medical imaging, really important. How do you both for personally identified information, being able to store that away and keep it private, as well as private health information? Super important. And so we use these things, these kind of scenarios, to make sure that we are building what we hope will turn out to be the most secure, the most private, the most extensible, and the most powerful cloud that exists on the planet. And we know that's very, very important for the region. And by the way, EMEA is leading in this area. We're now seeing it emerge in places like Brazil and Singapore and Indonesia and Japan. We know that this is an important thing and we expect to deliver on this. And what we say is that these are kind of building a cloud on Europe's terms. And so we're kind of collapsing it down from EMEA for a moment to Europe because there are very specific needs inside the EU, things like GDPR and a number of other things. We expect to build the most robust, most private, most extensible, and most powerful cloud on the planet. And we don't just say that, we're actually implementing that. So before we go and talk about our trusted cloud for a bit, I want to talk about the other part of this, which is great. Building one example of a cloud, bringing one region, isn't going to help the people around the world. It's not going to help developers deliver their innovation to all the customers that they may have in region, out of region, worldwide. So what we recently announced is we have a new cloud region in Milan. It's now open. An additional one in Paris. And an additional one in Madrid. But that's not enough. This week, we announced we'll be bringing new cloud regions to Norway, Sweden, Austria, Greece, and South Africa. And for those out there on the internet listening to this that might be in sub-Saharan Africa, this is part of the $1 billion investment that Google announced in spurring innovation in the region. Because not only do we want to enable reaching customers across Europe and the Middle East, but also Africa. And so we expect to see the huge amount of startup activity that we see in places like Cape Town, Lagos, Nairobi, and Casablanca, to start delivering innovation to customers in those areas as well. In addition to that, we've announced that we're expanding with Doha, Turin, Berlin, Dammam, and Tel Aviv. These are all cloud regions that we're bringing to market over the next months. And what does this allow you to do? It allows you to build locally, but deploy globally. And deploy your services as close to your customers as you need them to be. This is the largest single investment that Google has ever made in anything, is these new data centers. And we will continue to grow out. We expect this to be a global footprint for local development. So to talk a little bit about our trusted partner cloud and how we're approaching this, I'd like to ask Julian to come up on stage and kind of dive into the details of some of this. Julian?
Thank you, Matt. My name is Julien. I'm a Googler based in Brussels. I've been working many years advising organizations around the world and in Europe to handle sensitive data sets and workloads on Google Cloud. To connect to what Matt just announced, to be truly global, we must be local. And indeed, for anything relating to sovereignty, residency is a necessary condition. However, there is much more to residency to achieve sovereignty. And these additional abilities are what makes Google quite unique in how we respond to the sovereignty expectations growing everywhere in the world. Sovereignty is not about more security. You already benefit from a level of security very few can match when you deploy your or your customer services on these world-scale, frankly, world-class infrastructure. Sovereignty is about trust. Every day, we meet organizations around the world that frankly make suboptimal decisions when it comes to innovation ability, scalability, resiliency, even security, and sadly, sustainability, because they lack the trust to engage on cloud. Unless we fix that trust issue, also a cloud issue, we will not be delivering on our mission. So what is it exactly that we are solving for? In countries where we operate, we engage closely with customers, but also regulators, and we listen to lawmakers. And we hear three distinct narratives unfolding. The first is very familiar, is all revolving around data protection, security, and privacy. Since the arrival of the GDPR, like many others, we've been on top of this. And it's not to say that things are solved, far from there, but honestly, we are seeing good development, good tractions, and good progress in that direction, both from the technical side, also from the legal side, and even from the political side, as we might have read, you might have read last week. There is a second discussion, which is gaining traction these days, is related to the economic imbalances created by the uneven distribution of technology in different regions of the world. To paraphrase a French minister on this topic, we as Europeans have been there before. We will remember the discussions around nuclear energy knowledge or commercial airliners in the 70s. And we have fix this, and we will probably collaborate our way through this game again to be back into this game too. The third element is the reality that any responsible technology decision makers today cannot abstract the risk of having certain services not available in a certain region. This might unfold in an unexpected way, by the way. We have seen some countries having to pass laws or make decisions to get their data outside of their boundaries recently to keep the data more protected. So residency is very important, but access control is paramount. For some of these services, you or your customers will want control over these cryptographic keys. In September 2020, we published a vision outlining our working direction, and we stated that sovereignty, while strongly anchored into data protection, really goes beyond that. And what we are seeing is a deeper need for operational sovereignty, really the capability for local partners to have more, if not full, oversight over the cloud that their customers are using locally. Finally, we embedded into the vision the need for our customers to continue operate in situations where connectivity cannot be guaranteed anymore, either for technical, legal, or political reasons, delivering on a software sovereignty vision. A year later, in September 2021, we announced our first partnerships with T-Systems in Germany, Thales in France, Minsa IT in Spain, and TIM in Italy, to collaborate and develop together a portfolio of trusted cloud offerings for Europe. A year later, September-October 2022, we are announcing the first products coming out of these relationships. Google Sovereign Controls offer the ability to define the location of your customer data, control who has access to the customer data, and keep control over the cryptographic keys, including outside of Google's infrastructure. If you do not have these three technical controls, you do not have data sovereignty. You might want to use additional GCP core services or controls, like DLP was just mentioned, to de-identify the data, or confidential compute to keep data encrypted while in use. Our partner-managed services, or partner-managed sovereign controls, add an extra layer of control, an ability for local partners to control, monitor and control Google's access to the customer data, and add a layer of visibility and full control over, operational elements. The supervised cloud offering, when ready, from France and Germany, will be operated by local partners in country, allowing to serve specific data sets or specific requirements, meeting specific regulatory demands, like, for example, the Secnum Cloud in France. Finally, there are scenarios where less reliance on the cloud provider is necessary, and our hosted cloud solutions are working towards being able to operate in disconnected, fully air-gapped environments, meeting the software sovereignty ambitions. Delivering sovereignty is not a trivial task, not for us, also not for you, or anybody having to set these things up. However, we understand its importance, and we're engaging on this journey to deliver cloud on Europe's terms, a set of carefully crafted solutions put together with the local partners, but really aiming to deliver the true value of the cloud in a way that is acceptable by your global customers, starting in Europe. I want to end with a small reflection. We, as technologists, are basically laying down infrastructure, and infrastructure can last a very long time. It is not the first time that infrastructure is laid in times of high mistrust. The railways in the 1870s, electricity after the Second World War, and still today, when you travel through Europe and you take the train and you want to cross from France to Spain, you have to change trains because the rails have been laid in different width. Our task is to meet our customers' expectations today while not contributing to a long-term fragmentation for tomorrow. Having said that, Matt, you're welcome back on stage. Yeah.
Thank you, Julian. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about developers, you. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not going to tell you how long because it makes me feel bad, but I will tell you that the first project I work on was actually writing a C++ compiler for a company that doesn't exist anymore. I was actually very proud of doing that. We actually were taking C-front technology, throwing it out, and writing a native C++ compiler. And at the time, I remember thinking, nobody cares. Because the company I worked for didn't care about the C++ compiler. The people who were going to use the compiler did care, but they were using it because they were trying to create an interesting application or something like that. The fact that it was C++ would just happen to be the language they were using. Today, I'm going to tell you, and I think many of you feel this way, developers have never been more important. And I want to share a very quick story about my time in New York just a few days ago. I was sitting at a table with 7 or 8 CTOs, CXOs from some of the largest customers that Google has. One of them happened to be a CTO for a large bank. And he decided to share. I asked the question, so how important are your developers? How do you treat them? How do you recruit them? How do you pay them? How do you reward them? What role do they play in your organization? And he said something very interesting. He said, we're a large bank. We have a regulatory piece of the business that we have to account for. And then we have customers, both commercial customers and consumer customers, that we want to provide the best service to. So we set out what we're trying to do from a business perspective, and that's all done by executives and people like that. But the choice for tooling, application frameworks, cloud, all of that decided by the developers. And he said, after fighting for 10 years with developers on trying to tell them what they need to use, he just gave up. And he said, it's much more efficient to let them choose. Now, he said, the thing we always have to be careful about is the proliferation of tool chains and everything else. So he actually makes the developers get together and say, we are going, for this project, going to standardize this language, this framework, this tool set, this deployment environment. But he says it's much better than anything he's done in the past. And I'm here to tell you, that's the world we're moving to. If you don't feel it today, you will feel it in the future. Everywhere we go, all the developers we talk to, there are examples where developers are the leading innovators inside companies, and they have outsized impact on the decisions being made. That's important. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking to you. We believe you hold the keys to the adoption patterns for the next 10 years. We'd like you to choose Google Cloud, obviously, but you hold that ability in your hands. And so interestingly, one of the important aspects of that is that we all have to keep learning. I call myself a lifelong learner. I believe in that. I am constantly trying to learn about new technologies that come into the market. And so what we've done is we've built a program to help you do that as well. We want to increase your commitment to learning new skills. So a year ago, we launched a program and we made a commitment that we wanted to reach 40 million people to increase their cloud skills over the next 5 years worldwide. And we have our Cloud Skills Boost program as part of that. But this week, we added to that. And now what this includes is something that we're calling Innovators Plus, similar part of the program, where we're providing cloud credits, certification vouchers, and opportunities to engage in live events like this as part of the subscription. So everybody learns a little bit differently, but if you're interested in learning through formal programs, sign up today. This is the URL. This is a great way for you to get up to speed and stay engaged with what we think are going to be the most important skills in the cloud environment going forward. So, what we're also trying to do with our platform is make it easier for developers everywhere. We've talked about all the data centers we're opening up. We're talking about the regions. We want to make it easier for you to do what you love. And having spent time as a developer, I know people don't like running down bugs, working out deployment issues, trying to figure out why services are not as performant in one region versus another. Those are the things that we're trying to automate for you. And along those lines, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done. So, for example, for containerized applications, GKE Autopilot now will allow you to deploy and run faster, 2.6 times faster on Google Cloud than any other cloud platform. Using Cloud Deploy for continuous delivery, 2.4 times faster than any other cloud platform. For both, for Cloud Run, for serverless, for DevOps type things, 50% faster on our platform than others. Now, those are all nice, and that's all the innovation that we intend to keep on bringing. But there was something we announced this week that's really important. I just want to stop for a second, because it's not all about trying to get your code, get you to deploy, to develop, deploy, and operate your code in an easier environment. We also want you to be able to do it more securely. So I'm going to take a risk here. I just want to see, from a show of hands, how many of you write code today as part of your job? Excellent. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. How many of you really deeply inside care about security? Keep your hands up if you do. Interesting. Let me tell you how that usually goes. All the hands go down with maybe 2 for that last one. This is something that I've been involved in from the very beginning. It's something I think is very important. So we announced a new product today, or this week, called the Software Delivery Shield. It has a number of components in it that I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to tell you that the goal of this, for the first time, is going to be able to get developers to care about building secure software without having to do extra work. So this is not getting you to care and having you to do more work. This is getting you to care doing what you're already doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to actually show a little bit of it. So the first thing is we've got Cloud Workstations. So some of you may have heard we announced Cloud Workstations this week. Cloud Workstations is not just another IDE in the cloud. It is actually an environment, a secure environment that allows remote workers and contractors and vendors, as well as other developers, to build securely. And within Cloud Workstations, we have what's called assured open source software. How many of you today consume open source software as part of your environment? Yeah. Here's a question. How many of your managers are worried, like on a weekly or monthly basis, that they don't know what's in that open source software? Yeah, it's actually a very big issue. So through assured open source software, what we've done is we've gone through and started with 250 of the most important Java and Python libraries and provided our level of assurance by doing the testing, the analytics, and the fuzz testing against these so that you can use them, consume them within our environment completely securely. There are other companies that have tried this in the past, but nobody's done it at Google scale. And we're not stopping at 250, and we're not stopping with Java and Python. For the first time, because we do this, for you to consume open source projects, libraries, artifacts, etc., we want to make sure that you feel that it's a completely trusted piece of software that you're bringing into your environment. And that's what assured open source software is all about. In addition, we're adding security into the build environment. So within Cloud Build, we now have SLSA Level 3 support, threat prevention, which allows you to trace back all the software components that you bring into your environment. Allows you to build in an assured fashion. And then last, within GKE and serverless, we now have opinionated deployment options for you. So rather than handing you, and I won't quote the number of docs pages you'd have to read to actually use GKE effectively and figure out all the different options, we're now providing opinionated views of that so you can choose one of those configurations in a completely secure way. And so what I want to do now is bring somebody up on stage, I call him the mad scientist, Abdul, to kind of, rather than just talk about this, show this to you. Please welcome Abdul to the stage.
Thank you, Matt. I've been given the awesome task of doing a demo, so let's see what can go wrong, right? So I'm very excited to be here.